You know, it's wild how we spend most of our lives just like sprinting on this invisible treadmill. You know, you get the good grades, you snag the impressive job title.
Right, and you buy the car that makes your neighbors squint a little bit.
Exactly.
And you do all of that because, well, it's the exact blueprint society handed to you. I mean, it's safe, it's verifiable, and it just keeps you moving.
But then right when you think you're reaching the top, you look around and realize the ladder you've been climbing is leaning against the entirely wrong wall.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
You're totally exhausted. You have a nice watch,
Mm.
maybe a nice house, but you're not actually free.
And that is the ultimate modern trap. It's the realization that you've been playing a game measured by metrics that don't actually lead to independence.
Right, you're just a very well-compensated gear in someone else's machine.
Precisely.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking for an exit ramp off that exact treadmill. We are unpacking the philosophy of Naval Ravikant, a guy who's often called, like, the philosopher of our generation for the tech and business worlds.
Yeah, he really is.
And we've got a massive stack of material to pull from for you today. We're looking at Eric Jorgensen's meticulous compilation, the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, plus hours of raw audio transcripts from Naval's How to Get Rich series, and even his personal reading list.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But the mission today is to cut through the noise and deliver a shortcut for you to become a well-informed learner on all this. We're going to figure out how to stop playing the world's game and start designing your own.
Which is a radical shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And to even, begin that shift, we really have to look at the vocabulary we use.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about how to get to the destination, we really have to define what we are actually chasing, right?
Exactly. Because people throw around words like wealth, money, and status as if they're just interchangeable synonyms. And they are absolutely not. If you mix them up, you will inevitably build that ladder against the wrong wall.
Right. There. So let's break down that triad. What is the fundamental difference here?
Well, let's start with status, because it's the oldest game in the human playbook. Status is simply your rank in the social hierarchy.
Like who's number one, who's number two?
Right. And we've been playing this since our days living in monkey tribes. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, before we had agriculture or the ability to store resources, your survival depended entirely on your status.
Because if you were high status, you got the best food and shelter.
Exactly. And if you were low status, you were left out in the cold.
But the mechanics of the status game are brutal, right? Because it's purely a zero-sum game.
Precisely. The pie is a fixed size. So for you to take a bigger slice of status, my slice has to get smaller. There's a strict hierarchy. To be number one, somebody else has to be pushed down to number two. It requires friction. To win, someone else must lose.
So playing the status game is basically like playing an endless high-stakes game of musical chairs.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like when the music stops, someone is always left without a seat. You're just hoping it isn't you.
Right. And compare that to wealth, because wealth is a positive-sum game. Ethical wealth creation isn't about taking someone else's seat. It's about building a bigger room with more chairs.
Okay, wait, define wealth then.
Wealth is having assets, like computer programs, real estate, or businesses that earn while you sleep. When someone creates a new life-saving antibiotic or, a smartphone that connects the globe, they get wealthy, sure, but the rest of us also get the massive benefit of that creation. It brings abundance to the world.
So ethical wealth creation is like planting a community garden. The more seeds we plant, the more everyone gets to eat. But if that's true, if transitioning from hunter-gatherers to modern society is driven by this positive-sum wealth creation, why does the pursuit of wealth get such a bad rap?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the material points out that journalists and politicians who loudly attack wealth creators are usually just playing that zero-sum status game themselves.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, think about the mechanics of it. They gain social status by virtue signaling, right? By pointing at the wealthy and saying, look at me, I represent the people, I don't care about money.
Right, it elevates their rank in the hierarchy.
Exactly, but it drags the cultural conversation down into a zero-sum fight rather than focusing on building that positive-sum abundance.
So they're just playing musical chairs and pretending they're gardening.
Yeah, pretty much.
Meanwhile, money, as Naval defines it, is just the social IOU. Like, it's society's way of transferring wealth. It's a physical or digital credit that basically says, you created value in the past. Here is a token you can redeem for value in the future.
Which means we should be optimizing for wealth, not money or status.
Yeah.
We want those assets that work while we sleep.
But how do we position ourselves to actually capture those assets? Because a lot of people think, okay, I'll just become a doctor or a corporate lawyer. I'll make $500 an hour. That's wealth.
Right.
But the philosophy here flat out rejects that. The transcripts say you will never get truly wealthy renting out your time.
Because the underlying math of renting your time is purely linear. If you are that lawyer billing $500 an hour, your input is 1 hour and your output is $500.
It's a strict 1-to-1 ratio.
Exactly. You are not earning when you're sleeping or when you're on vacation or when you're sick. To get truly wealthy, you have to earn non-linearly. You need to write a piece of code once, that's your input, and have 10,000 people buy it while you sleep.
And to do that, you must own equity. You have to own a piece of a business.
Yes.
But to decouple your inputs from your outputs and actually get that equity, you have to fundamentally change your relationship with luck. Now, when most people hear luck, they think of winning the lottery.
Pure chance.
Right. But the material breaks down 4 distinct kinds of luck. The first is blind luck. That's the lottery. You have 0 control over it.
The second is luck through hustle and motion. This is the person who's just constantly running around, networking, trying new things, failing, trying again.
They're just generating kinetic energy.
Yeah, they're stirring the pot until a lucky opportunity eventually shakes loose.
Then there's the third kind, luck from preparation. You become so deeply skilled and observant in a specific field that you can spot a lucky break or an anomaly when everyone else completely misses it.
You've trained your mind to see the invisible.
Right. And then we reach the fourth and arguably the most powerful kind, luck from your unique character.
This is when you build a specific brand, a unique mindset, and a reputation for high integrity, and the luck actually seeks you out.
So what does this all mean? I have pushback here for a second.
Go for it.
If you're building a unique character that naturally attracts opportunities, is that even luck anymore? I mean, isn't that just destiny? If a guy randomly finds a sunken treasure, that's still just blind luck, regardless of his character.
That's a really fair challenge, but let's look at the actual mechanism of how this works. Let's say you spend a decade becoming the absolute best deep-sea diver in the world.
Okay.
And you don't just dive. You build a public reputation for taking on the most complex, dangerous salvage missions that nobody else will dare attempt. You have ultimate integrity. People trust you.
Okay, I'm with you.
Now, someone else, by sheer blind luck, stumbles across a sunken Spanish galleon off the coast. But they have no idea how to safely extract the gold. Their blind luck just became your luck. They have no choice but to come to you to get that treasure, and they will gladly give you half of it for your skills. You engineered that luck through your character and your reputation. Naval argues that in 1,000 parallel universes, you want to be wealthy in 999 of them.
So it's deterministic.
Exactly. You don't want to rely on the 50 universes where you just got a lucky lottery ticket. Wealth should be a deterministic outcome of who you are.
That deep-sea diver visual really locks it in. You literally become the unavoidable bottleneck for a specific kind of opportunity.
Yes.
But that raises the obvious question, how do you actually build that exact unique character? The material outlines a very specific 3-pillar framework to make this happen. Specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage.
Let's start with specific knowledge.
Okay.
This is defined as knowledge that cannot be trained in a school. Because if society can train you to do it in a classroom, it can train someone else to replace you. And if you can be easily replaced, you have no negotiating power, which means you're never going to get equity. Specific knowledge is found by pursuing your genuine, innate curiosity. It feels like play to you, but it looks like work to everyone else.
There's a fantastic anecdote in the transcripts about this. Naval talks about how his mother pointed out his specific knowledge when he was just a teenager.
Oh, the pizza parlor story.
Yeah, he wanted to be an astrophysicist. But she told him, no, you're going to go into business. Because she observed that every time they walked down the street, he would obsessively critique the local pizza parlors.
Right.
He was analyzing why they sold slices a certain way, what their profit margins must be, how their foot traffic drove sales. He had this natural analytical obsession with business mechanics long before he recognized it as a valuable skill.
It's a profound realization. Your specific knowledge is often something you do so naturally that you don't even realize it's a skill. But having specific knowledge isn't enough on its own. People need to know they can trust you to apply it. That is where the second pillar comes in, accountability.
Right, because I can be the world's greatest pizza parlor logistician, but if nobody knows who I am, I'm not getting paid.
Exactly. Accountability means taking risks under your own name. It is reputational skin in the game. And it is terrifying for most people because if you fail, you wear that failure publicly.
You take the risk of humiliation and financial loss.
But society demands a face to reward. Because you take that downside risk under your own name, society is willing to reward you with the upside, with equity and leverage, when you succeed.
Which brings us to the third pillar, leverage. If specific knowledge is what you do and accountability is putting your name on it, leverage is how you scale it.
Yes.
And this philosophy draws a massive line in the sand between old leverage and new leverage. Old leverage is labor and capital.
Right. Labor is getting people to work for you. Capital is getting people to give you money to invest. And while they are powerful, they're heavily guarded. We tend to overvalue labor leverage in our culture. We think having a massive team of employees makes us important.
Yeah, status game again.
Exactly. But managing people is incredibly complex. And with both labor and capital, you are entirely dependent on someone else saying yes.
So old leverage is basically begging for permission. It's like trying to talk your way past a stubborn bouncer at an exclusive club. You need the bank manager's permission for capital, or you need recruits' permission to become your labor.
You are at the mercy of the gatekeepers. But the new forms of leverage code and media completely bypass the bouncer. They are permissionless.
Right. So instead of trying to get into the club, permissionless leverage is like throwing your own massive block party. Anyone in the world can show up, and you didn't have to ask a single person for permission to host it.
I love that.
Yeah, you don't need a publisher's permission to write a blog or record a podcast. You don't need a distributor's permission to write software and put it on the internet. And the best part, that code or media works for you while you sleep.
What's fascinating here is how the internet is the ultimate multiplier. It connects every human on the planet. It allows you to scale any niche obsession. If your specific knowledge is incredibly obscure, the internet still allows you to find an audience of thousands globally. You escape competition entirely through pure authenticity. Nobody can compete with you on being you.
Okay, so you found your specific knowledge, you're taking accountability under your own name, and you're utilizing permissionless leverage like a piece of software.
Yes.
But how do you actually execute day to day? To become an unstoppable force, the philosophy says you need to combine two distinct skill sets: learning to build and learning to sell.
Building is the creation aspect. It's designing the product, writing the code, or manufacturing the physical good. Selling is the distribution aspect. It's marketing, recruiting, communicating the vision, and raising money.
Like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs.
Exactly. When one person possesses both of those skills deeply, they don't just create products, they create entire industries. They understand the technical architecture deeply enough to build it, and they possess the persuasive storytelling to sell that vision to the world.
The advice is, if you have to pick one to start, choose building. It's much easier to stand out with a genuinely great product than to just be another charismatic hustler with nothing to offer.
Right. Absolutely.
But they also note that sales is a skill that scales infinitely better over a lifetime. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What if you are a total introvert?
Right.
Like, what if the idea of networking at a conference or pitching on a stage makes you want to crawl under a rock? Can you still sell?
It's a crucial distinction to make. Naval defines selling much more broadly than the stereotype of a fast-talking used car salesman. Selling is fundamentally just persuasion.
Okay.
If you are an introverted builder, your form of sales might be writing a technically brilliant, highly persuasive blog post that recruits other engineers to your cause. Or it might be a quiet, one-on-one conversation where you convince a key investor.
So it's not just stage presence.
Not at all. It is about finding the medium of persuasion that aligns with your specific knowledge and your natural temperament.
To master that balance of building and selling, and to deepen your specific knowledge, you obviously have to constantly feed your mind. But the approach to learning outlined here flips traditional education completely upside down.
It really does.
It bluntly states that there is no actual skill called business. In fact, the advice is to avoid business schools and business magazines entirely.
The rationale there is that business schools largely teach using case studies. And case studies are just historical anecdotes. They tell you what worked for one specific company in one specific decade under specific macroeconomic conditions.
Right.
They aren't fundamental truths. Instead, you should study foundational algorithms.
Like microeconomics, game theory, psychology, persuasion, ethics, math, and logic.
Precisely. Because if you understand the logical and scientific foundations of how human beings interact and how the physical world works, you can deduce the rest. You won't ever fear picking up a new book or tackling a new industry because you have the root source code.
And the rule for reading itself is brilliantly simple. Read what you love until you love to read. The recommended reading list in these sources is wild. It spans from Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens to Richard Feynman's physics lectures, all the way to Matt Ridley's optimism and sci-fi novels.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense, though. It's like going to the gym. You don't walk in on day one, having never lifted weights, and immediately try to deadlift a 500-pound physics textbook.
You're going to pull a mental muscle and quit.
Exactly. You read science fiction or fantasy to build the muscle of the reading habit first.
You have to cultivate the genuine desire to learn before you tackle the dense material. And when it comes to taking that knowledge out of the books and applying it in the real world, the emphasis is heavily on iteration over duration. The learning curve is driven by the number of iterations, not the number of hours you put in. Doing is always faster than watching.
Right. Working 10,000 hours in a retail store, doing the exact same task every single day won't teach you as much about business as running 100 different tiny marketing experiments in that same store over a month.
It's the feedback loop that creates the learning, not the clock.
And this brings us to the most fascinating pivot in the entire philosophy. Let's say you do it all perfectly. You use foundational knowledge, you find your specific knowledge, you leverage it permissionlessly, you decouple your time from your income, and you get incredibly wealthy.
You won the game.
Right, but the material throws a massive philosophical curveball. Wealth only solves money problems. It will not solve your internal state. The final essential piece of the puzzle is happiness.
And the definition of happiness they use is profound. It's not about jumping up and down with joy. Happiness is defined simply as not suffering and not desiring. It's the ability to embrace the present moment exactly as it is without wishing it were different.
Desire is framed as a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. It's a self-inflicted gap between your current reality and your expectations. And because of this, they completely redefine the concept of retirement.
Yeah, let's pause on that for a second because this blew my mind. Retirement isn't an age. It's not a specific number in your 401k. Retirement is simply when you stop sacrificing today for an imaginary tomorrow.
When today is complete in and of itself, you are retired.
There is an incredibly powerful quote from Eric Jorgensen in the transcripts that summarizes this duality perfectly. Peace is happiness at rest, and happiness is peace in motion.
But wait, how do you reconcile that? Isn't desire exactly what drives the ambition to build wealth in the first place? How can you possibly build a massive world-changing company or engineer all this luck and leverage while simultaneously trying to not desire anything?
That sounds contradictory, right?
Doesn't the ambition cancel out the peace?
It sounds like a paradox, but it's actually about extreme prioritization. The goal isn't to have zero desires. I mean, if you had no desires, you'd just sit under a tree and eventually starve. The goal is to limit yourself to one dominant desire at a time.
Just one.
Yes. It's about letting go of the other 499 trivial desires generated by society. The desire to go on that vacation you saw on social media. The desire to upgrade your car just because your neighbor did. The desire to win a meaningless political argument online.
You drop all of those.
You drop them. You ruthlessly focus your ambition on the one thing that truly matters to you, and you find a state of flow and peace while you are in motion towards it.
Wow. What an incredible roadmap. Let's recap the mission for you. Escaping the treadmill of modern life means actively rejecting those zero-sum status games where you have to push someone else down to win. It means taking the time to uncover your unique specific knowledge, taking accountability for it under your own name, and using permissionless leverage like code or media to decouple your time from your income.
And ultimately, it's understanding that true wealth is just the tool that buys you the time to focus on your internal peace.
It all comes down to a fundamental evolution in how we view freedom.
Yeah, early in life, when we are climbing that ladder, we chase freedom, the freedom to do whatever we want, buy whatever we want, travel wherever we want. We think that power is the finish line.
Right.
But Naval argues the ultimate evolution of this philosophy is actually freedom from reaction, freedom from anger, freedom from feeling envious, and freedom from being forced to do things by external obligations.
Look at your calendar this week.
Yeah.
Really look at it. How much of your energy, your stress, and your time is being spent chasing the freedom to do something, when what you actually crave deep down is the freedom from it? Are you still climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall? Give that some thought. Until next time, keep diving deep.